South Carolina Day at Darlington International Dragway. You sit aboard the hardest accelerating racing vehicle on the planet. The 5,000 horsepower top clear South Carolina Day at Darlington International Dragway. You sit aboard the hardest accelerating racing vehicle on the planet. The 5,000 horsepower top fuel dragster of International Hot Rod Association champion Doug Herbert. Hi everybody, I'm Bob Varsha along with Ted Jones. Welcome to the opening round of the 1996 season. Weather has been the story thus far, but we'll talk about that later. Now it's time to get the season underway, and what a way to start. A top fuel shootout between the reigning world champion right there, Doug Herbert, and his arch rival, Rhonda Hartman-Smith, the winner here at Darlington a year ago.
Doug Herbert qualified number 3 in the field. Rhonda Hartman number 6. Two veteran Carolinians on the line.
You ride with Doug Herbert as the lights flash. He accelerates, but in the right lane, Hartman-Smith drives away and has problems doing it.
Rhonda Hartman-Smith almost a problem coming through the lights right there, but did a marvelous driving job of correcting that top fueler. We'll look at it one more time, Bob. You can see right now Doug Herbert in the far lane going up in smoke as he overpowers the track. However, Hartman-Smith on a straight run until she gets to the traps, that is.
A 5:16 for Rhonda Hartman-Smith. Now to our next pair, an interesting pair. Rit Pustari from Norwalk, Connecticut against Luigi Novelli from Crete, Illinois.
This sounds more like a Formula One race. Look at the smoke contest. However, shutting down too early will be Novelli, and so Pustari will pick up the victory. Not much of a race on this one, though. 7:54, the winning ET.
It wasn't pretty, and I hope they didn't hurt too many parts. Now we move on to our next pair. There is the queen of top fuel, three-time world champion Shirley Muldowney, making a return to the IHRA. Her first matchup of 1996 will be against a very tough contender, Jim Bailey from Mantua, Ohio.
Jim Bailey, of course, a former IHRA world champion. Shirley has never won an IHRA championship, but as you pointed out, Bob, she has 3 NHRA world championships and 1 AHRA world championship to her credit. So guess what's missing?
She is the pioneer in female drivers in top fuel drag racing. Someone Rhonda Hartman-Smith and the other female drivers can look up to. Great to have her back in the series. Bailey, all he did last year was wind up number 3 in the world following a runner-up season 2 years ago.
Shirley Muldowney qualified number 2, so she's set notice to the guys that she is here. Muldowney has problems, has to shut it down. Bailey wipes out an engine. Wow, what a run. A 5:13 for Bailey, and he lost a motor on that run.
He was out on her by 5/100ths of a second. Let's take another look.
We'll look one more time, see that Shirley actually running good, and as she comes off the pad, something happens on that engine. Now watch the one bank of cylinders for Bailey.
In our other matchup, Jack Ostrander had an easy walk into the semis when David Bieneman from Royal Oak, Michigan could not answer the call. So Ostrander will take on Pustari and Bailey against Hartman-Smith in the semis. The palmetto tree of South Carolina waves over an entirely revamped Darlington International Dragway to welcome once again the All-Pro Auto Parts WinterNationals. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to the longest-running season opener in IHRA history. After no fewer than 3 attempts to get these All-Pro Auto Parts WinterNationals off the ground were rained out, it appears that Mother Nature is finally ready to cooperate. But all the delay has simply added to the anticipation of this opening round of the 96 season for 2 reasons. One is the natural competitive instincts of the racers, and the other is the fact that they have their first opportunity to experience the totally renovated Darlington International Dragway. To begin with the racers, here's Ted Jones.
Last year, the Pro Modified world was shocked when Scotty Cannon, who had dominated the class for 4 consecutive years, had to end up settling for the number 2 position in that championship chase. What's he done about it? Well, for starters, a brand new car. How about an ultra swoopy 1963 Corvette, still using the blown 526 engine? Scotty plans to get back on top and regain that number 1 position. And in pro stock, another former world champion, Doug Kirk, has switched from an Oldsmobile to a Mopar. Obviously, he wants to regain the lost world championship. Over in Alcohol Funny Car, Mark Thomas, now that Todd Payton is not running the IHRA circuit, hopes to get back on top and gain an unprecedented 5th world championship in Alcohol Funny Car. The only world champion to repeat last year was in Top Fuel. Doug Herbert is on top but has a problem. The number 2 finisher, Rhonda Hartman, now has a team. Bruce Linton is driving her old car and hopes to gain that world championship. And if you thought that world championship points chase was close last year, hey, just hang on, baby, because you ain't seen nothing yet.
All right, thank you, Ted. Coverage of the All-Pro Auto Parts Winter Nationals is being brought to you by Precision Gear. When your rear end is on the line, depend on Precision Gear. By the more than 1,250 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. And by Polaris, makers of 14 different high-performing ATV models, including the new Sportsman 500. We'll be back to Darlington for Alcohol Funny Car action. Stay with us. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina. Bob Varsha and Ted Jones with you. Before we get back to the action on the track, here's Brett Kepner.
Well, gentlemen, 1 year ago, we were dealing with the old International Dragway for the All-Pro Auto Parts WinterNationals. You might remember 1 year ago, I told you about the transition point at the end of the concrete pad being a real problem for the supercharged cars. Well, nowadays, that transition point goes right to new concrete that goes all the way down to the 1/16th mile mark. This racetrack is completely different. I mean, it's really nothing that relates to the old surface in any way, shape, or form. One thing that has remained constant, though, the atmospheric conditions of Darlington, South Carolina, that always traditionally produce unbelievable amounts of horsepower. Bob Varsha, what are the weather stats?
Brett, 60 degrees. You see the flag snapping in the background. Great conditions for making horsepower. Not too many fans on hand as a result of the various rain cancellations. Let's go back to the Alcohol Funny Car first round right now for some highlights of action, including this pass by Butch Kernodle right there in the camera lane. Watch him take it right out to the fence and tag it.
Tagging that guardrail, but that's why the new owners moved it in, is so that very thing would happen. He bounced off it like a cue ball on a pool rail.
So DID checks out in one important safety aspect. Now to the performance end of things. Take a close look at Jim Late from Myerstown, Pennsylvania, as he sets the bar plenty high for everybody.
Everyone was in shock on this run, Bob. Nobody could believe it. 588, 236 miles per hour. They wondered, did he have nitromethane in that thing?
And he didn't even keep it straight. That 5.886 will stand as the national record if he could back it up as we move to the quarterfinals. It'll be Lape running solo. Melinda Green could not answer the call for this round. So now all Lape has to think about is the record. He carries those front wheels. He's on it.
Incredible traction here at Darlington. Well, he nailed it. 592 with a 4. Look at the speed. 237 miles per hour. Lape has got to be the man to stop it.
And you bet these guys know about that pass already. There was Corky East, the track owner from Nebraska. He'll be going up against Vaughn Smith from Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Vaughn Smith made his name known last year when he had a runner-up finish against Dennis Bedrosian here at the Winter Nationals. Corky East, always a strong competitor on the IHRA trail, has been doing a lot better, although he only qualified number 12 at this event.
Vaughn Smith, one of the all-time cool sponsors, Atomic City Tool from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, America's Atomic City, of course.
A 1995 Achieva for Vaughn Smith, a 92 Pontiac Trans Am for Corky East. Just fiberglass shells, replicas of those cars.
Oh, huge red light in the near lane for Corky East. Way ahead of the tree.
Look at the time for Vaughn Smith, though. 598, 231. This track is hooking, Bob.
Absolutely. We had 5 sub-6-second rounds in the first round alone. On to our next pair. There goes Scott Weiss from Hanover, Virginia. He'll be going up against the red machine of Jimmy Rector from Vernon, Alabama.
Scott Weiss, the number 2 qualifier, right behind Jim Lape. Jimmy Rector, of course, qualified number 7.
Bobby Balcom already into the semifinals. He had a solo when Sam Leyland couldn't answer the call.
A 1994 Dodge Daytona against a 1995 Mustang body here.
Up come the revs with that distinctive rasping rattle. Whoa, Weiss gets the front wheels up in the air, and he's got some ground to make up. Give it to Rector.
A 598 for Jimmy Rector, and Weiss was first off the line with a 440. That's a good alcohol reaction time.
But he bounced those front wheels and had to get out of it. So it'll be Jimmy Rector against Bobby Balcom in the semifinals. Jim Lape will take on Vaughn Smith, and that ought to be a classic. Right now, let's take time out for this year's first edition of the Race Mechanic. Ed Jones picking up on a controversy in pro stock that broke out here at Darlington. The Race Mechanic is brought to you by Holly, the performance edge.
Well, Bob, for this week's edition of Holly's Race Mechanic, we moved 2 hours north of Darlington International Dragway to Sophie, North Carolina, where Roy Hill's shop is located. And there's some last-minute work going on as they prepare for eliminations at the All-Pro Auto Parts Winter Nationals. Now, it seems as though the International Hot Rod officials informed Roy's crew about 2 hours prior to eliminations that Roy's number 2 car, driven by Richie Stevens, was illegal because the engine setback was too much. Now, IHRA rules provide that the engine setback can be no more than 2 inches as measured from the center line of the front spark plug hole to the center line of the front spindle. And Roy, this engine setback, according to that measurement, was how much?
Well, they told me 1.25 inches. What we're going to do is move it a good 1.25 inches so there won't be any doubt about the car being legal.
Now, how did this happen? In other words, this car was legal when it was built. Have you actually moved the block back in this car?
We've not moved the block, the motor plate, or nothing. What happened is 3 years ago when this car was built, we've changed our head design 2-3 times and relocated the spark plug hole, trying to make the motor more efficient. Flame travel is very big in these Ford motors and also General Motors motors.
Now, we have several different engines here in the shop, and we've measured and found as much as 1 inch difference from the spark plug hole from the front of the valve cover to where the hole is.
That's right, Ted. You know, this car won the championship last year and won races the last 3 years, so it was found legal everywhere it's been. Just all of a sudden, it's popped up. But we'll get it fixed.
So you'll be ready for eliminations with a legal car.
Well, Richie Stevens is going to be ready for eliminations with a legal car.
Well, there you have it. The Race Mechanic in action.
Twice the number of cars, twice the work for Roy Hill and his Race Mechanics. Pro Stock Quarters coming up. Back at Darlington, South Carolina, moments ago you saw that Pro Stock car being worked on at Roy Hill's shops in North Carolina. Now it is fixed, it is legal, it's in the hands of 18-year-old Richie Stevens from New Orleans, Louisiana, going up against former world champ Doug Kirk.
And he put a hole shot on Kirk, 682, 202 miles per hour with the engine in the legal location.
These are highlights of the first round of Pro Stock. You want another great story? There's one. Former NBA All-Star Larry Nance, last year a car owner. Now he's a car owner and driver, and he's going up against Roy Hill.
Roy Hill laid off the line of 406 for Nance. That's incredible. 682, 202 miles per hour for the basketball player.
A star thus far this weekend. Now our final matchup, and this was another performance-oriented showdown. John Yoke from Ellenboro, West Virginia against John Koenigshofer from Otterville, Ontario.
Well, Yoke should win this. This is the number 1 in 16 qualifiers, and Yoke backs that record run up, a 673 on an earlier weekend with a 676 on this pass.
The new national record holder as we move to the quarterfinals. In the foreground, Ron Miller from Lebanon, Ohio, going up against the phenom, 18-year-old high school student Richie Stevens.
Ron Miller, the Moser Engineering back car. Richie Stevens on another pass now, out of shape, and wisely lifts and shuts it off just as he was taught to do. Ron Miller will roll on. This is the best he's ever done in his entire Pro Stock career.
688 at 201 miles an hour. But over the other lane is the story. You know Roy Hill is going to tell Richie Stevens, even though he lost, he did the right thing.
Out about the 300-foot mark, you can see the car out of shape, and he shuts it down right there and gives the race to Ron Miller.
Remember a couple of years ago when the professor himself took a wild ride here at Darlington. On to our next pair. Here comes Larry Nance in the Catch 22 96 Chevy Monte Carlo, going up against Floyd Cheek from Chattanooga, Tennessee in a Ford Probe.
He has his hands full now. You know, Cheek really runs with that 95 probe. 814 cubic inches of Ford engine. That's squeezing the rules about as tight as you can get it without being illegal. Nance with 802 cubic inches of Sonny Leonard motor.
815 cubes. That's right on the limit. Ford versus Chevy. Good launch. Nance out slightly ahead.
Larry Nance, quick cat-like reflexes with a 676, 202 miles per hour.
So Larry Nance goes another round in his professional racing debut. Now on to our next pair. John Noble from Melville, New York, out on Long Island, going up against Charlie Peppers from Auburn, Georgia. This is a north versus south battle.
This is another one of those Chevy versus Ford battles, too. And Noble only 802 cubic inches, but Sonny Leonard is making a lot of horsepower with that smaller engine.
No question about it, but Noble very late, more than a half second in reaction time. Still, he wins the race.
Oh, barely. 676 to a 689. Charlie Peppers with a 432 reaction. You've got to look at this one again. Talk about tight. Off the starting line, first coming out is Charlie Peppers. But here comes John Noble trying to catch him. He's right beside him at the 8th mile mark. Now watch the top-end charge for both cars. Talk about a drag race? Yeah, that's what it's about.
Whoa. On to our final pair, matching number 1 qualifier John Yoke against number 8 Jerry Yeoman.
Yoke, the number 1 qualifier, he is really on a roll with that 96 Thunderbird, 812 cubic inches, and you're on board. He's pulling about 3 G's right now. He continues to pull about 2 G's. It really won't start falling off until the finish line. Picks up the win, a 674, 204 miles per hour.
This track is absolutely ripping today. Another look.
This track is working very well. They said the concrete pads are within plus or minus a 1/10 of an inch for levelness.
And that's absolutely what these cars need. Carrying virtually no suspension, you have to keep that rubber on the ground. John Noble will face Ron Miller in the semifinals of Pro Stock, while Larry Nance continues his Cinderella weekend. He'll go up against the number 1 qualifier, John Yoke. Over in the Pro Modified area, Scotty Cannon gets the latest iteration of his Killer Red Tomatoes in shape. We'll be back for Pro Modified. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina. Bob Barsha, Ted Jones, and Brett Kepner with you for the opening round of the 1996 IHRA season. For more than 2 decades, Darlington has been the opening round of the series. We're used to great action, but nothing like what we saw here 1 year ago. This is Terry Walters in a Pro Stock flip not to be believed.
You noticed all the dust and sand flying. Look how far back the guardrails were back then, Bob. You know, they called the NASCAR track just down the road too tough to tame. Well, Darlington has finally been tamed.
No question about it. Different sort of problem in this Top Fuel blowout for Doug Foxworth.
A lot of action, and the fans did enjoy it, but it was a little rough on the equipment.
And on the wallet for team owner Bobby Rex. In the finals of Alcohol Funny Car last year, a very different sort of problem. For the guy in the red car in the far lane, Dennis Bedrosian wins the race, and he goes out with an all-time dramatic exit.
Well, there was a cow pasture down there made for a rough ride off the end of the drag strip. That's no longer there. A big turnaround area, a lot safer stopping, and now they have a sand trap so that you don't go out through the cow pasture.
Bedrosian's car was not badly damaged, and he came back to race again. Plus, he didn't have to repack his parachute. Highlights now of the first round of Pro Modified. Former world champ Tim McAmis against reigning titleist in the right lane, Tommy Mooney.
You can see Mooney lost clearly, and Tim McAmis had some serious engine damage right there.
Look at all of that smoke. He can't see where he's going. Fortunately, he kept it off the rail, but he took it back to the pits. We'll have more on that in a moment. Now, this is 4-time world champion Scotty Cannon looking for some performance in his first round matchup with Louis Burris.
Scotty Cannon on a run with that brand new Corvette, a 655 Burris red lighted.
Meanwhile, back in Tim McAmis's pit, here's Brett.
It gives you an idea of how bad the damage really was in the opening round win over Tommy Mooney, and it was such a horrific upset. And now it's even more horrific because that was the last bullet you had.
Yeah, I think when we were talking on the other end, the motor we ran Friday and tested pulled a rod cap off and split the bottom of the motor open on it, but it contained itself in the engine diaper, and from the pieces that came out of this, it looked like it dropped a valve busted the piston in half, and then both rods swung around and cleaned out the bottom of the motor and opened up the diaper, and that's where all the oil came from.
There isn't much left, in other words.
No, it like I said, it run over a lot of pieces down there, and because when it was, the belly pans under here are just aluminum, and they're all banged up from all the stuff coming out the back.
Comprehensive engine destruction for Tim McAmis as we move into the quarterfinals now. No, that is not Tommy Mooney in last year's car. It is last year's car, now in the hands of last year's crew chief, Shannon Jenkins.
And Shannon Jenkins, a teammate to Tommy Mooney, as the teams begin to form in IHRA competition. Qualified the car in the number 5 position. Now, his job is to win and act as a blocker. Pat Moore, who formerly drove for Larry Nance, is doing very well. Qualified number 4 with the same Camaro he drove last year.
He was number 3 in the world last year. Both cars nitrous oxide, normally aspirated, and a foul start. Red light for Jenkins.
That means Pat Moore will roll on. You know, he could end up doing as well as Larry Nance, his former boss. Moore 664, 209. Hey, he's in this race. We'll take one more look at it. You can see Shannon Jenkins leaving. The wheels comes up, and I see red.
Absolutely.
What a story this is. I mean, the car that you weren't supposed to be driving this year, and Ed Steffi comes up and buys the thing, puts you back in it. It will go 664 this time. It ran in the 650s in qualifying. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, we're doing as best as we can. We didn't get much track time out, and we're struggling. Like I said, we haven't had any testing compared to some of these other guys down south here.
It's not like you have Larry Nance's budget anymore either.
No, Ed's racing out of his own pocket, and he's a past racer, and he knows what to buy and what's just a waste of money, and he's doing a real good job. And I'm real pleased that we teamed up together.
We're glad you're back.
Thanks, Brett.
On to our next pair. Look at the wild paint job on Tommy Gray's 38 Chevy Coupe.
Watch the wild run by Tommy Gray. Hey, this car is storming. Tommy Gray, a 665, 207 miles per hour. Well, it's not the fridge, but it runs great.
Gray was supposed to have run Tim McAmis. Obviously, McAmis could not answer the call. And now we're going to have some questions answered. Everybody wants to know what Scotty Cannon has in store this year. You can bet this most competitive of racers absolutely hates running that number 2 on his window, Ted.
And this is one the crowd is split on. Lyman, South Carolina, Scotty Cannon. Quayne Stott, the low buck racer from Inman, South Carolina. You know what? I think they'd like to see Quayne win, although everybody wants Scotty back on top.
No doubt about it. Quayne Stott with that 88 Chevy Beretta with the normally aspirated power plant, nitrous oxide injection. Cannon going with the supercharged car on alcohol.
And look out, that car is on a pass. He's pulling 641, 217. Unbelievable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the man that just dropped the bomb. Dropped the bomb.
Well, I've been wondering what he run. I knew Quayne was going to be hell on the tree.
And he did leave on you.
Well, my hands hurt, and I was 600 while ago. So look, lean it, burn it, kick it, whatever. We got enough motors if we kill that motor every round to make it to the final.
Don't tell me about killing the motors, because this thing didn't have a wisp of smoke out of it.
Well, if it don't, it's on the crispy critter side, but we got more of them.
Did they tell you the whole numbers?
41.
217.28.
So did I my 214 earlier back that up?
Heck no, it's way too quick to be backed up.
We'll back it up a minute.
Well, to back it up, he's got to get within 1% of that ET. He'll have his chance in the semifinals against Pat Moore, while Tommy Gray will take on Chris Hunt, who advanced on a foul. Now here's Brett in the top fuel pits.
Well, gentlemen, as you can see, Jim Bailey's first round win was expensive, but it wasn't just the cylinder head gasket and a little bit of the block that got hit. How about this right here? Burning right through the engine block, and the damage on the cylinder heads was equally tough, burning at least a good portion of one combustion chamber out of them. That means the crew has already replaced the motor. The new one's in, ready to go for round number 2, and let's face it, if they can go 513 hurting parts, this could be a 4-second ride if everything goes right for the St. Louis boys.
Well, Brett, on this racetrack, don't be surprised. Let's take another look at what happened to Jim Bailey.
Well, you can see the damage right there as the fire's coming out of that car, pouring out of it.
Incredible power developed by these engines. They continue their work. We'll be back for Top Fuel Semis.
Who did that 30D? Oh, gosh.
Welcome back to Darlington International Dragway, where the All-Pro Auto Parts Winter Nationals continue. Right now it's time for this year's first edition of Drag Review. Here's Brett Kepner with all of the news.
In the last year, the sport of drag racing has been rocked by a series of team car efforts which have produced impressive results, working with not one, but several drivers working for a common goal. Well, International Harvard Association Drag Racing has been no stranger to the team car concept. You might remember Roy Hill and Mike Bell with their two-car punch in the World Championship Pro Stock standings last year, or for that matter, a few seasons ago when Scotty Cannon teamed with Pete Williams for a two-car Pro Mod effort. For 1996, however, there are a couple that are going to stand out. One of them in Top Fuel Eliminator involves Virgil Hartman, Rhonda Hartman's dad and the team owner, and a brand new Top Fuel car of Bruce Litton, the trailer manufacturer from Indianapolis who's moved up from Top Dragster Eliminator. Now, along with Rhonda and Bruce Litton, Pro Modified will see the most two-car action this year. Tommy Mooney, the reigning world champion in debuting a brand new 63 Corvette Stingray, has teamed with his old car and good friend Shannon Jenkins driving the 41 Willys that won the world title last year. Scotty Cannon announced his own two-car team with match race veteran Hugh Scott at the wheel of the Willys that Cannon drove last year, and Cannon himself at the wheel of a new Corvette. However, the biggest shock of this whole story came when Scotty Cannon simultaneously created his new two-car team and then at the same Winter Nationals event vaporized it. He decided not to campaign a two-car operation. We'll know what's going to happen this year with the two-car team effort when we see each team line up two cars on the racetrack. Until then, however, it seems to be a straightforward approach at picking up points for at least two of those operations, with Scotty Cannon deciding maybe the best way is to just stick as Scotty Cannon. That's this edition of Drag Review.
All right, thanks, Brett. Sometimes you can outthink yourself in this sport. Top Fuel semifinals, there is Jack Ostrander, a proven national event winner, #1 qualifier, going up against #5, Rit Pustari from Connecticut.
Pustari having problems. Look at the smoke pouring out of that thing. Something isn't right. However, Ostrander had a gate job put on him, but now starts pulling away. 5:11, 280 miles per hour. Well, not the 4-second pass he wanted, but he'll take it.
Interesting pass for both drivers. Watch the car in the left lane. Pustari, mechanical problems with all of that raw fuel spilling from the left bank of cylinders. Pretty straight run for Jack, although he gets close to the center line right there.
Well, Jack Ostrander looked like the king of this racetrack in qualifying. Now, almost a half month later, it looks like you might get a chance to prove it in race time. That was nice.
Well, the thing broke first round, and it broke again that round.
What'd you break?
Before the lights. It's got the rods out of it, probably, but it broke up.
It didn't have any smoke at all out of it.
Well, it's got oil everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it does. You're right.
It broke. That's why I clicked it off. It went to 90.
I'll tell you what, if you can get it to do it one more time, you may have this thing locked.
That's all I want.
See ya.
Well, that's interesting. Jack may have the performance in hand if he can keep the motor together. Now, Rhonda Hartman-Smith against Jim Bailey.
Don't sell this Bailey team short. They're plenty tough. Hartman is out first, but Bailey pulls ahead. Bailey hurts an engine. Looks like another one's going down, but Bailey picks up the win.
Bailey, 5:14 with a 267 miles an hour, but he puked another motor in the right lane.
Look at this. You can see when the engine goes. Look at the smoke pouring off of that. Now Hartman blew the engine.
That was an expensive contest. Now let's meet our Precision Gear Crew of the Week. John Yoke's Pro Stock effort, brought to you by Precision Gear. When your rear end is on the line, depend on Precision Gear. Here's John Lundberg.
One of the most interesting stories to come out of the All-Pro Auto Parts Winter Nationals is the car right behind me. This totally independent, brand new race car, just 14 days off the frame jigs, is the #1 qualifier in Pro Stock with the quickest and fastest times ever recorded in IHRA drag racing for this class at 672 and over 205 miles per hour. I mean, that's just an incredible time for a 14-day-old car. I mean, the rule for years is you never take a new car to a major drag racing event. How many passes did you have in this automobile before you set that number on Thursday?
That was the 5th run for the car. We had made 4 runs a couple of weeks prior. That was nothing with the ET like that. That was the 5th run, the 5th and 6th runs. It was a 672 on the 5th and a 676 on the 6th. So the car is definitely there. It's doing its job, that's for sure.
It's about the relationship between eldest sons and fathers, often tempestuous. Whatever has gone on in the past, these two have come together in one common effort, the campaigning of their Pro Stock Ford Thunderbird. Bob Yoke, you're a Ford dealer in Ellenboro, West Virginia. How did you find your way into Pro Stock?
Well, I've always had a big attraction for drag racing and used to do it myself quite a lot. In fact, up until just last year, I personally raced too. John and I did it together, and so, now that we got to racing professionally, why, I kind of had to give that end of it up, and John's handling the controls of this car and our car we had last year, and does a fine job.
A small-town Ford dealer from West Virginia and his son have challenged the mountain of pro stock drag racing. And if this weekend's performance is any indication, they'll climb it without too much difficulty.
It's 400.
Back at the WinterNationals, we are ready for the semifinals of Alcohol Funny Car. In the near lane, Bobby Balcom from Charlotte, North Carolina, and in the far, Jimmy Rector from Vernon, Alabama.
Well, you know, Bob Rector stopped Scott Wise, who was the #2 qualifier and a racing veteran here on the IHRA circuit, and then a red light start right off the bat for Balcom. So Jimmy Rector, the #7 qualifier, will go into the finals with a 599, 228 miles per hour. This track is looking great.
The fives just keep on coming, and here's the man who leads the performance parade, Jim Lape from Myerstown, Pennsylvania, going up against Vaughn Smith from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and both of these guys have posted some pretty hot numbers.
They're both running 5-second ETs, the #1 and the #4 qualifier. A 93 Cutlass against a 95 Olds Achieva as we watch that ultra slick wind dynamic tunnel tested front end staging.
In fact, neither man has been over 6 seconds in the 2 rounds thus far. Good launches.
Boy, they're running great, and it'll be a decisive victory for Jim Lape. A 593, 237. You know, if nothing goes wrong, this is his event.
No question, Lape is dominating, and that's surprising in Alcohol Funny Car, which typically produces races like this one.
He was aside of you the whole way, as you just said. 13 thousandths of a second true win margin. In fact, here he comes up behind you because he knows it was a drag race. 593 to 596. 13 thousandths true win.
Good run again, buddy. Good run. Excellent. That's what it's all about. It's what the fans are here to see, and that's what we're here to do.
It's not like you're dominating here. You had to work for that one.
That's correct. It's a hard field. I told you that earlier.
Now you go into a car, go into the final against a car that's running the 590s 3 times, so that's not going to be a walk.
Who's that, Rector?
Yeah.
We'll wreck him.
Well, you guys may not think Jim Lape is dominating, but I do. There's Larry Nance preparing for battle. Pro Stock will be up next. John Yoke getting ready too. Back at Darlington International Dragway, here's Brett Kepner with a track fact.
He's the man behind one of the best-known names in aftermarket equipment in all of automotive history. And as an amateur triathlete, his enthusiasm for fitness is equaled only by his dedication to the sportsman racers in drag racing, specifically in 1996 IHRA drag racing. Gary Hooker has been involved with this sport since its infancy, and now continues to give even more back with the announcement that he indeed will back the 1996 class racing shootouts in modified eliminator superstock and stock eliminator racing. And the man himself is here to make sure that the program goes through. Gary, this is a heck of a move on your part, but it seems like I said, the enthusiasm you have for sportsman racing in general goes above a lot of manufacturers.
Well, I think so. We, for over 33 years, we've started out in drag racing ourselves and have always supported the grassroots racer, both with product, which is our main role, to build things for people, and as well as giving them the things that they need.
Well, it's no small way, that's for sure. I mean, we're talking about a $50,000 package and even little things like a Best Appearing Sportsman Car Award. I mean, something just for the racers who put that much effort into their car. That means an awful lot.
Well, I hope it does. I hope it helps everybody. I'm particularly impressed with the family environment out here, and that people come out here, camp. Sometimes we see 3 generations of a family, and they're still participating in the sport, and I hope we can help that continue in our small way.
Hooker Headers, one of the great names in performance products for a long, long time now. Pro stock action, there is Ron Miller, who has never been this far in IHRA national event competition. The Lebanon, Ohio driver is up against John Noble.
Noble qualified number 2 with that brand new 1996 Monte Carlo. Equal reaction times. He's there first with a 680, 202 miles per hour.
So John Noble is into the final. Now let's see who he will meet. There is Larry Nance, also having a great opening round of the 1996 season. We will ride aboard John Yoke's Ford and watch Nance in action.
Nance in action indeed. A 4:03 reaction time, and this is what Yoke sees. Nance pulling away. He's trying to pull back. No, look at Larry Nance's crew as they are elated. Larry Nance goes into his first ever final.
Meanwhile, Brett Kepner is making one of his frequent visits to Jim Bailey's pit.
You can see where this engine block is burned. Gee, this seems kind of familiar. Haven't we been here before when we saw this engine block burn in the same place? Yeah, it's true. The Faber & Sons Top Fuel Dragster is burning equipment very similarly to its first round victory. But let's face it, 25,000 plus 25 is 50. Set of heads for another 15 and another set of heads for 50. About $100,000 worth of stuff sitting here. And they still have to put in a new motor for the final round. Now, Frank Faber says the sole problem here is that Ronnie Swearingen's new engine combination needs more fuel. They're just not giving enough fuel. He swears up and down it's going to be a bad boy when it does make it to the finish line under power. And he says the last thing he wants to do is get runner-up here 3 years in a row.
Oh, my. Keep in mind, those top fuel burners need that fuel to help provide cooling as well as fire in those engines. Now Pro Modified. Tommy Gray going up against Chris Hunt.
Two gorgeous cars. Look at the 36 holes of Hunt. Tommy Gray, and Hunt has to shut down as he crossed the center line. Gray on a straight run, just a little bit of smoke out the back. A 656. Yes, he's in this drag race.
Question about it. Chris Hunt punches out. You see it right there across the center line. You are done for the day. By that time, though, Gray was long gone. Now to our next pair. Here comes Scotty Cannon, who's already got that 6:41 with a 1 in the books at 217 miles an hour. He not only wants to beat Pat Moore, he wants to back up those numbers.
What do you do if you're Pat Moore and your competitor just ran a 6:41, and worse yet, he's Scotty Cannon? You go for a hole shot. It's his only chance.
See if he tries to lay a tree on Cannon.
Almost equal reaction times, 5:17 to 5:18. Here comes Scotty. Another 40's on the way. 6:47, 215 incredible miles per hour.
And that will back up those national marks for Scotty Cannon. Look at a great drag race. Cannon actually a little squirrely there on the concrete.
Ah, but he can drive, Bob. Straightens that new Corvette out, and bang.
And so our finals are set in all 4 pro classes. Jim Lape getting ready. We'll be back. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina, where the sun is getting low and it is happy hour. Finals coming up in all of our professional categories. We will begin with Top Fuel, where Jack Ostrander, the #1 qualifier, will meet Jim Bailey, who has been burning up parts this weekend.
Boy, indeed, he has. An Ostrander with a brand new sponsor has the money to pop those bullets in. Frank Faber and Sons do not. It's very much of a budget operation. But you know what? They'll give it their best shot here in the final.
You heard Brett Kepner say earlier, they've spent almost $100,000 worth of parts to get to this point, and they've still got 1 pass to go.
Well, nobody said drag racing was cheap, Bob.
No question about it. You see Ostrander being backed in over the sticky rubber streaks laid down during the burnout. Bailey does the same.
You know, this could be very, very important, although it's not as critical on this new trick surface that Darlington has. There's traction just about everywhere. But if you get your driver lined up outside those tracks, the race could end right there. You go up in smoke right off the starting line. Consider 5,000 horsepower thrust to the rear tires all at once, and there it happens as the clutch comes in too quick. Now an engine explosion. It's whose lucky day is it going to be? Jack Ostrander with a 590, 156 miles per hour.
Both men going for performance. In the left lane, Bailey goes up in smoke. Then in the right lane, out comes the bottom end of the engine for Ostrander. He will limp to the finish, the champion.
Just looking at the motor, you'd say that is one of the least pretty power plants you've ever seen. Actually, all the way around, it was one of the least pretty winds you could have possibly asked for. What a weird way to go.
I don't really know what happened this time. This was new motors, so.
A lot of fire almost immediately.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
It left pretty decent, but then I don't know.
If I know you, you had to be looking around. Where was he?
Oh, I thought for sure he was going to come by, but I got to thank my Vista Foods guys, Vinny and the Rocky Mountain guy and the 300 Bull guys, all the people that are involved in this thing. This is great.
It's still a heck of a team effort. I mean, everybody on the crew is your buddy. I mean,
oh yeah, we don't have any paid help. Everybody just comes to help, so it's a great thing.
Well, all these guys in the red and white shirts and this man are leading the world championship.
Man.
And that is the point, isn't it? He is the world championship leader. Now we will meet the leader in alcohol funny car. Jim Lape burns him in as he gets set to meet the red machine of Jimmy Rector.
You know, they'll be in no hurry to stage these cars because the alcohol cars actually build more horsepower as they try and put heat into the motor. So they're never in a big hurry to stage up. Now, one danger you do have is if you take too long to stage that car, the heat that you lay down on the track with that burnout can go away.
Tops batting down. Lape pulls into position. He has been the statistical leader throughout the weekend. So Rector is going to have his work cut out for him in the near lane.
Rector will try the whole shot. Does a good time with a 4:56. Is that enough? No. Rector having a little bit of problems. Jim Lape continues to dominate. 594, 238 miles per hour.
A spectacular weekend for Lape in the right lane, carrying those wheels just that little bit. Both cars going straight, then a bit of a wiggle in the left lane for Rector. That's all it took. Lape drives around it.
Well, I'll tell you what, for a day that was probably the quickest and fastest overall, I'm talking average now in IHRA history. Obviously, you recorded a world ET record earlier. To come out in this final round against a guy that was that tough, you knew he was going to be there. He did leave on you, but horsepower won at 594. New speed record for IHRA at over 238.
I love it. I love it. Got to thank Keyports Auto Stores again. I got to thank Susquehanna Valley Insulators.
You got a bunch of new ones this year.
Yeah, I got Castrol. Castrol's been with me for a while. Eric Sindrich for keeping my blowers fresh and helping me at this race. He's a great help. He runs an alcohol dragster of his own. Coors Custom Painting for keeping this thing looking good. IHRA, Darlington Racetrack, and there again, the sunshine.
And I'll tell you, for a guy that just announced his intentions to go for the whole season, that's a pretty scary thought for the rest of these people, I think.
That's what I'm here for, scare them.
You did.
Thanks a lot, guys.
We're going to have some fun with Jim Lape this year. Meanwhile, back at the starting line, Larry Nance, all strapped in. We'll be back. The sun is getting low in Darlington, South Carolina as the opening event of the 1996 IHRA Snap-on Tools National Championship Trail begins to wind down. Pro Stock Final coming up, and it's an interesting combination. There is Larry Nance, goes about 6'10" from Akron, Ohio. He'll be going up against John Noble, who is about 5'8", I would guess, from Melville, New York. But both men in brand new 96 Chevy Monte Carlos, both men with 802 bow tie V8s.
Number 2 qualifier John Noble has to be the favorite to win right here, even though they are very equal. It's going to come down to starting line reactions, and Larry Nance has been the best off the starting line all day long.
Well, you bet. Larry Nance came in his last reaction time 4:03, just 3/1000ths of a second off of perfect.
He might be transferring some of those quick reflexes from the ball court over, Bob.
No question about it. He is an athlete. Come the revs, away they go. 4:23 react for Larry Nance. He's out first. Problems for Noble in the far lane. Nance will win it.
Nance had him covered anyway. A 779, 165 miles per hour as he pops the new twin chutes as required by the new IHRA rule.
If you're going over 200 miles an hour, you've got to have 2 parachutes. Another look. Good launches for both drivers. Nance gets a little squirrely, driving like a veteran.
Yes, indeed, with wheels off the ground.
And he picks up his first professional victory in his first pro race. Now, the vastly experienced guy, Scotty Cannon, going up against this beautifully turned out replica 38 Chevy Coupe of Tommy Gray. Once again, Ted, in Pro Mod, it's the nitrous-boosted, normally aspirated engine against the supercharged alcohol-burning mill.
And the favorite cars, the nostalgia cars. Now, the idea of the weight advantage is the nostalgia car is called a shoebox because it's pushing a lot of air with that flat front end right there. However, IHRA may have a problem with all these 63 Corvettes come out, because if you look at the front end of Scotty Cannon's car or any of the other 63 Vets, they aren't very flat, Bob. They look like a wedge.
Absolutely. All-important air getting to that blower. At the launch, Gray actually puts the tree on Scotty Cannon. Will Cannon have the horsepower?
No, Gray took it away at the top-end charge of 214 miles per hour for Cannon. But that whole shot's the difference. Tommy Gray, 6:58. Scotty slowed to a 6:63. Look at it again. See, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Scotty's not doing a straight line.
He will not go to victory lane.
Third national event win. Here comes something not too many people have ever gotten, and that's...
Way to go. No, I can't do it without
Yeah, he can't do it without it.
Congratulations.
That's a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a rarity there. But let's face it, for you to come out with a new car, first round today, you didn't know where you were. You didn't know where you were until the semis.
I tell you, I want to thank Doug Kirk, his father, Rick Jones, Roy, the whole bit, because all of them helped us. We were lost on the clutch. This is a new motor we just set up, new car, first race. So I think we got some promise ahead of us here. But I got to thank a lot of people that helped me, Precision Gear and all that. And I want to especially thank my wife for letting me come here on Easter to race.
Indeed, it has been a saga. And interestingly, Ted, no repeat winners from a year ago.
No, indeed. Ostrander on top of the points, but Larry Nance, boy, what a way to start your career as a pro stock driver.
Tommy Gray in Pro Modified, and Jim Lape in Alcohol Funny Car. Our coverage has been brought to you by Splitfire. Enter the performance zone with Splitfire.